The Zargonian Senate chamber hummed with the low thrum of bureaucratic efficiency. Row upon row of towering, crustacean-like Zargonians sat in perfect, chitinous silence. Each wore identical carapace armor, polished to a mirror sheen, reflecting the cold blue light that filtered through the massive, geometrically perfect windows. Every rustle of a scroll, every click of a claw against a datapad, echoed with the weight of millennia of unwavering tradition. The Zargonians were, if nothing else, predictable. Their society functioned with the ruthless precision of a well-oiled war machine, every decision meticulously analyzed, debated, and codified in triplicate. Spontaneity was a disease, individuality a threat. Order was everything, which is why the arrival of Subject 42 was causing such consternation. Subject 42, a human, a species previously unknown to the Zargonian concordance, had simply appeared. No warning, no distress beacon, just a small, dented escape pod drifting into their sector. The audacity, the sheer impoliteness of it all. The Grand Proctor, a particularly ancient and ornery Zargonian with barnacles encrusting his carapace, addressed the Senate. His voice, amplified by a vocoder, dripped with disdain. This human defies all established parameters of acceptable behavior. Its actions are illogical, unpredictable. He paused, allowing the gravity of the situation to sink in. Illogical and unpredictable. To a Zargonian, these were fighting words. Preliminary assessments, the Grand Proctor continued, indicate a high probability of danger. A ripple of unease spread through the Senate. Danger, a word usually reserved for rogue asteroids or particularly virulent space plagues. To apply it to this thing was unprecedented. The image of Subject 42 flickered on a massive holographic display. A being of soft pink flesh covered in fabric. Its features were mobile, disturbingly so. It was currently engaged in what the Zargonian analysts could only describe as facial contortions, accompanied by strange guttural noises. The report stated with considerable Zargonian understatement that the noises were unsettling. Its biological functions are inefficient, the Grand Proctor elaborated. It requires constant sustenance, expels waste products with alarming frequency, and sleeps during designated work cycles. The Senate buzzed with horrified murmurs. Such blatant disregard for productivity was simply offensive. Furthermore, the Grand Proctor concluded, his voice hardening, Subject 42 has demonstrated a disturbing lack of respect for established protocols. It has questioned directives, challenged authority, and he hesitated, clearly struggling to find the appropriate term, made jokes. The Senate fell silent. Jokes. The concept was so alien, so utterly foreign to the Zargonian mindset, that it was met with stunned incomprehension. Clearly, this human was not just dangerous, it was deranged, a threat to the very fabric of Zargonian society. The decision was unanimous. Subject 42 must be observed, analyzed, contained, and, if necessary, neutralized. The fate of the Zargonian concordance might very well depend on it. After all, what possible good could come from a creature that chose to be illogical? Subject 42's introduction to Zargonian culture began, as all things did, with a mandatory orientation session. This took place in a sterile, windowless chamber, the walls lined with holographic displays showcasing Zargonian achievements in engineering, warfare, and bureaucratic procedure. The chamber was, naturally, perfectly cubic. Two Zargonian officials, designated Compliance Officer Gruck and Protocol Adherent Zorp, stood stiffly before Subject 42. Gruck, the larger of the two, was tasked with reciting the Zargonian Code of Conduct, a document so extensive it took 3 standard Zargonian work cycles to complete. Zorp's role was to ensure strict adherence to Regulation 749B, subsection 12, paragraph 6, which governed the precise angle at which a Zargonian official must stand when addressing a non-Zargonian entity. Subject 42, meanwhile, was busy examining a small metallic sphere it had found lodged in its garments. So, it began, interrupting Grook's recitation of Article 3, Section 8, Subsection 22, Paragraph 47, which dealt with the proper disposal of bio-waste. Is this like a breath mint or something? 'Cause my pod ride tasted vaguely of despair. Grook paused, his chitinous faceplate twitching in confusion. A breath mint? I do not compute. Please refrain from interrupting the recitation of the Zargonian Code of Conduct. Your cooperation is mandatory. He resumed his droning monologue, his voice unwavering. Subject 42 shrugged, popped the sphere into its mouth, and began chewing. Tastes like copper and regret. You guys got any like space gum? For afterward? Zorp, meanwhile, was visibly agitated. Subject 42 was not maintaining the designated posture for a non-Zargonian entity during a code of conduct recitation. Regulation 802C, subsection 9, paragraph 1 dictated, disciplinary action. The orientation continued, a symphony of cultural dissonance. Grook recited rules about mandatory meditation cycles, the prohibition of unscheduled personal interactions, and the proper method for filing a complaint about substandard nutrient paste. Subject 42, meanwhile, offered unsolicited opinions on Zargonian interior decorating. A little beige, don't you think? Inquired about the availability of recreational activities, got any space bowling alleys, and attempted to initiate a high five with Zorp. Don't leave me hanging, buddy. Each interaction was a tiny seismic tremor in the carefully constructed edifice of Zargonian society. The officials, trained to handle every conceivable scenario, found themselves floundering in the face of such blatant weirdness. Later, after the orientation, Grook and Zorp convened in the break room. It questioned the nutrient paste. Grook stammered, his voice laced with disbelief. Said it tasted like sadness. Zorp shuddered. And the high five. Such intimacy. A clear violation of Protocol 441D, subsection 2, paragraph 16, regarding acceptable forms of interspecies greeting. They exchanged worried glances. This human was proving far more disruptive than anticipated. Its casual disregard for the rules, its bizarre attempts at humor, it was all deeply unsettling. The Zargonians valued logic, order, and predictability. Subject 42 was none of those things. Subject 42 was chaos incarnate, wrapped in a fleshy, pink package. And the Zargonian Concordance was beginning to feel very, very nervous. The Zargonians possessed a device of immense power and cultural significance, the Orb of Annihilation. To them, this was not merely a weapon. It was a symbol of their military prowess, a deterrent against galactic aggression, and a testament to their technological superiority. The orb, housed in a heavily guarded vault beneath the Senate chambers, was said to be capable of vaporizing entire planets. Its activation sequence involved a complex series of biometric scans, cryptographic algorithms, and ritualistic incantations, performed by specially trained high-ranking officers. The Zargonians treated it with reverence, a sacred relic of destruction, and then came Subject 42. During a routine inspection of the orb's vault, a procedure mandated every 7.2 Zargonian solar cycles, Subject 42 displayed an unusual level of interest. While Compliance Officer Grook meticulously checked the energy conduits and protocol-adherent Zorp verified the orb's rotational alignment. Subject 42 circled the device, whistling a tuneless melody. So, it began, casually tapping the orb's polished surface. This thing like blows up planets, huh? Cool. Grook nearly dropped his data slate. Subject 42, refrain from touching the Orb of Annihilation. Its surface is calibrated to maintain a delicate energy balance. Your appendage could disrupt the equilibrium. Zorp, meanwhile, was frantically consulting his official handbook, searching for the appropriate protocol to address unauthorized physical contact with a weapon of mass destruction. Subject 42 ignored the Zargonian's distress, peering closer at the orb. Does it come in other colors, like a nice pastel blue? Or maybe with, glitter? Gruck sputtered, his chitinous faceplate turning an alarming shade of purple. Glitter? This is not a decorative bauble. It is a weapon of unparalleled destructive capability. But Subject 42 was already fiddling with the orb's control panel. Hey, what does this button do? It asked, its finger hovering over a large, red, ominously labeled switch. Before Gruck or Zorp could react, Subject 42 pressed the button. Low hum filled the vault. The Orb of Annihilation began to glow. Alarms blared. Red lights flashed. The Zargonians braced themselves for, annihilation. Instead, a small metallic arm extended from the orb, holding out a single perfectly chilled can of fizzy drink. Subject 42 blinked. Oh, it's a soda machine, huh? You guys are weird. It popped the top and took a long swig. Needs more sugar. The incident in the orb vault sent ripples of unease through the Zargonian Senate. Compliance Officer Gruck filed 17 separate reports, each detailing Subject 42's blatant disregard for established protocols and unsettling fascination with potentially dangerous technology. Protocol adherent Zorp, traumatized by the experience, requested a transfer to the Outer Rim Sanitation Division. Senator Fizz, a particularly paranoid Zargonian with a penchant for conspiracy theories, saw a darker purpose at play. This soda machine incident, he hissed during a closed-door session, is clearly a smokescreen, a cunning attempt to lull us into a false sense of security. His antennae twitched with suspicion. Subject 42 presses a random button and gets a refreshing beverage? Does this sound logical to anyone? The other senators shifted uneasily. Logic was the bedrock of Zargonian society, their guiding principle in all matters, both trivial and existential. Subject 42's actions defied logic at every turn. Grand Moff Tarkus, head of the Zargonian Defense Forces, grumbled, "The humans' behavior is unsettling. We have analyzed their neural patterns, their physiological responses, even their digestive processes. Nothing makes sense." He projected a series of holographic diagrams onto the Senate floor, each illustrating the humans' bizarre actions. Observe, Senators. Subject 42 consumes nutrient paste designated for Zorgonian larvae. They then proceed to engage in what they term dancing, a series of chaotic, uncoordinated movements that serve no discernible purpose. And then, most disturbingly, they attempt to communicate with domesticated cleaning drones. A collective shudder ran through the Senate. Talking to cleaning drones was considered highly eccentric, even by Zargonian standards. Senator Vrook, a more pragmatic member of the council, attempted to inject a note of reason. "Perhaps we are overreacting," she suggested. "The human is clearly simple. Perhaps they are merely ignorant of our customs and protocols." Senator Fizz scoffed. "Ignorant or strategically deceptive? Consider the evidence, Vrook. The soda incident, the dancing, the drone conversations, it all points to a carefully orchestrated campaign of confusion." He paused, searching for the right word. "They seek to destabilize our society, to undermine our authority, to replace our nutrient paste with sweets." The very notion sent gasps of horror through the chamber. The Zargonian Senate, a body renowned for its unwavering logic and meticulous planning, was beginning to unravel. Subject 42, with its casual disregard for protocol and unsettling fondness for sugary drinks, had sown the seeds of doubt and paranoia. They couldn't comprehend the humans' motives, and that was precisely what made it so dangerous. What hidden agenda could possibly lurk behind such illogical behavior? The question haunted them all. The tension in the orb chamber was palpable, thick enough to choke a gleepworm. Grand Moff Tarkus, flanked by heavily armed guards, watched Subject 42 with narrowed eyes, his mandibles twitching in anticipation of something, anything. Subject 42, oblivious to the impending doom, or perhaps entirely aware and simply not giving a damn, continued to poke and prod at the Orb of Annihilation. "So," the human drawled, its voice echoing slightly in the vast chamber. "Are we going to do this or what?" Tarkus signaled his guards to tighten their grip on their plasma rifles. "Human," he growled, "you have been warned. This is your final opportunity to cease your tampering with the orb." Subject 42 sighed dramatically, a sound that grated on Tarkus's nerves like a malfunctioning gravity drive. "Look, pal," it said, rolling its eyes, "I'm just trying to figure out how this thing works. No need to get your scales in a twist." With a final, deliberate motion, Subject 42 pressed a large, unlabeled button on the side of the orb. A whirring sound filled the chamber, followed by a gurgling, almost musical tone. The Zargonian guards exchanged confused glances. This was not the sound of annihilation. From a small nozzle on the orb, a stream of bright pink liquid began to flow, collecting in a small, prefabricated cup. Subject 42 grinned, its teeth flashing. "Aha!" it exclaimed triumphantly. "I knew it." It grabbed the cup, took a long, loud sip, and then sighed contentedly. "Ah, that's the stuff." Tarkus was apoplectic. What is the meaning of this?" he sputtered, his voice barely a croak. "What have you done to the Orb of Annihilation?" Subject 42 wiped its mouth with the back of its hand, a gesture that Tarkus found inexplicably offensive. "Done?" the human said, raising an eyebrow. "I just got myself a drink. You guys want one?" It gestured towards the orb with the cup. "It's like the bestest cherry fizz in the whole galaxy." Cherry fizz? Tarkus felt his worldview collapsing around him. The Orb of Annihilation, the ultimate weapon of the Zargonian Empire, capable of vaporizing entire planets, was a soda dispenser? The guards lowered their weapons, their faces a mixture of bewilderment and dawning curiosity. One of them, a young Green Guild recruit named Gleep, tentatively approached the orb. Is it really cherry-flavored?" he stammered. Subject 42 chuckled. "Cherry, grape, lemon lime. They got all kinds of flavors. Step right up, folks. Don't be shy." Gleep, emboldened by the human's surprisingly jovial demeanor, hesitantly filled a cup and took a sip. His eyes widened, a slow smile spread across his face. "By the great Zargon," he whispered, "this is amazing." Within seconds, the chamber was in chaos. Guards abandoned their posts, shoving each other to get to the orb. Senators, drawn by the commotion, peeked in, their initial shock quickly replaced by an overwhelming desire for the sweet, fizzy beverage. The air filled with the sounds of slurping and satisfied sighs. The Orb of Annihilation, once a symbol of fear and power, was now the center of a joyful, sugar-fueled pandemonium. Subject 42 leaned against the wall, watching the scene unfold with a knowing smirk. The Zargonians had declared them dangerous, and they were right, just not in the way they expected. The most dangerous weapon in the universe, it turned out, wasn't a planet-destroying orb, but a simple sugary drink, capable of toppling an empire with a single sip. The great Zargonian Empire, once a paragon of order and militaristic precision, began to unravel faster than a cheaply made space freighter. In a solar flare, the cherry fizz, grape glee, and lemon lime lunacy seeped into the very foundations of Zargonian society, corroding the rigid structures that had stood for millennia. Soldiers, once paragons of discipline, now brawled over the last drops of grape glee, their plasma rifles lying forgotten on the polished plasteel floors. The highly regimented military drills were replaced with impromptu dance-offs fueled by sugar rushes. Strategists, instead of plotting galactic conquests, were now experimenting with different flavor combinations, desperately seeking the ultimate fizz. The battle cries of the Zargonian legions transformed into enthusiastic burps and contented sighs. The bureaucracy, once a monument to efficiency and endless paperwork, ground to a halt. Zargonians, hopped up on lemon-lime lunacy, abandoned their stations, leaving piles of unfiled forms and unprocessed decrees to gather dust. The Senate, usually a scene of tense debates and calculated power plays, was now a sprawling picnic, with senators sprawled on the floor sticky with cherry fizz, arguing about the merits of artificial sweeteners versus good old-fashioned Zargonian sugar beets. The planet itself bore witness to the Empire's rapid decline. Empty cans of cherry fizz, grape glee, and lemon-lime lunacy littered the landscape, glittering in the harsh light of Zargon Prime's twin suns like discarded jewels. The pristine cities, once symbols of Zargonian order, were now covered in a sticky film of sugary residue, attracting swarms of buzzing, six-winged glorp flies. Even the sacred Zargonian monuments were defaced with graffiti proclaiming the glory of cherry fizz. The proud Zargonian banners, which once depicted scenes of glorious victories and unwavering discipline, were replaced with crude drawings of the Orb of Annihilation, spewing forth its addictive nectar. The official Zargonian anthem was replaced by a catchy jingle about the joys of sugary refreshment, sung off-key by legions of sugar-crazed citizens. The Zargonian Empire, once a force to be reckoned with, was now a galactic laughingstock, a cautionary tale whispered among the stars. Other species watched in bewilderment and amusement as the Zargonians descended into chaos. Some saw it as a sign of the universe's inherent absurdity, a cosmic joke played on a species that took itself far too seriously. Others worried about the implications of this sudden, sugar-fueled collapse, wondering what other unexpected threats might lurk in the seemingly harmless corners of the galaxy. But one thing was certain. The Zargonian Empire would never be the same again. The sweet siren song of the Orb of Annihilation had forever altered the course of their history, leaving them a sticky, buzzing, and utterly bewildered mess. Hi. Commander Zorgon, his carapace gleaming dully under the dim emergency lights of the abandoned Senate chamber, stomped toward Subject 42. The human was, as always, infuriatingly relaxed, lounging on a pile of discarded Senate cushions, casually, sipping from the accursed orb. Zorgon's mandibles clicked with barely suppressed rage. "Human!" he bellowed, his voice echoing in the cavernous room. "Explain this debauchery. My empire is in ruins. My legions are dancing. The sacred protocols are ignored, all because of that." He gestured a claw towards the orb with disdain, as if simply looking at it might make him crave the sugary beverage. Subject 42, barely glancing up, shrugged. "Thirsty?" he mumbled, before taking another long swig of the fizzy liquid. He then held out the orb towards Zorgon. "Want some? It's like totally awesome." Zorgon's internal processors whirred, struggling to reconcile the image of the swirling, brightly colored liquid with the complete collapse of his civilization. The logic circuits of his brain screamed in protest, but the sight of the sugary beverage triggered something in his midbrain, a deep craving he had never experienced. Against his better judgment, against all the training and discipline drilled into him since birth, Zorgon reached out a trembling claw and accepted the orb. He hesitated for a moment, then tilted the orb back and allowed the liquid to flow into his mouth. His eyes widened, a jolt of pure, unadulterated pleasure surged through his nervous system. The sweet, tangy flavors exploded on his tongue, washing away all thoughts of duty, honor, and galactic conquest. His mandibles twitched uncontrollably. He felt happy, utterly, ridiculously, blissfully happy. Zorgon let out a long, contented sigh, the sound echoing through the ruined chamber. The orb slipped from his grasp and clattered to the floor. He didn't care. He giggled. The Zargonian High Commander giggled. He had never giggled before in his life. And so, the mighty Zargonian Empire, feared throughout the galaxy, crumbled not from laser fire or cunning strategy, but from a sugary beverage dispensed from a device they had mistakenly labeled the Orb of Annihilation. The legions of warriors, once paragons of discipline, now spent their days frolicking in fields of discarded orb containers, their battle cries replaced with contented burps. The complex bureaucratic systems, painstakingly developed over millennia, were abandoned in favor of impromptu dance parties and fizzy drink-fueled philosophical debates. Subject 42, now hailed as the Great Liberator, a title he found rather amusing, became an unlikely icon. Holographic images of him, perpetually lounging and sipping from an orb, were plastered across every available surface. The Zargonians, freed from the rigid constraints of their militaristic past, embraced a new era of carefree living, their days filled with laughter, sugary treats, and the occasional sugar-induced nap. The planet, once a symbol of martial might, transformed into a bizarre paradise of vibrant colors, overflowing fountains of fizzy drinks, and Zargonians wearing silly hats. Their economy, once focused on weapons, production, and galactic domination, now revolved entirely around the orb and its endless varieties of sugary flavors. Of course, there were downsides. Zargonian dentists were suddenly the most sought-after professionals in the galaxy. The incidence of what the Zargonians now called the sweet sickness, a condition suspiciously similar to diabetes, skyrocketed. And the collective IQ of the Zargonian population seemed to have taken a rather significant dip. But as Subject 42 often pointed out with a shrug, hey, at least they're happy, right? And indeed they were, utterly, blissfully, and perhaps a little bit foolishly, happy. The Zargonian Empire had fallen, replaced by something far more ridiculous, a galactic sugar rush that showed no signs of slowing down. Far beyond the borders of the now sugary Zargonian space, in the hushed halls of the Galactic Senate, representatives from a dozen different species watched the unfolding events with growing unease. A holographic display showed images of Zargonian cities transformed into playgrounds, their once imposing fortresses now adorned with giant, inflatable versions of the Orb of Annihilation. A Glarbonian senator, his many eyes blinking in rapid succession, muttered to his aide, This is unprecedented. Their entire civilization has devolved into a child's birthday party." The aide, a nervous-looking creature with shimmering scales, squeaked, "Indeed, Senator. Initial reports indicate a complete societal collapse. Military readiness is non-existent. Their strategic defense systems are now programmed to dispense flavored foam." Across the chamber, a representative from the Krill Collective, a hive mind, species known for its cold logic, pulsed with concern. "The human influence is disturbing. Their capacity for disrupting established orders is far beyond our initial projections." Another Krill drone added, "We must reassess our threat analysis. If a simple sugary beverage can dismantle a militaristic empire, what other seemingly innocuous technologies might they wield? What about entertainment, art, affection?" The Krill drones exchanged worried pulses, the implications of such chaos rippling through their collective consciousness. Meanwhile, in a dimly lit corner of the Senate observation deck, a hooded figure watched the display with a flicker of amusement. The figure, a representative from the notoriously unpredictable species known as the Frivulians, chuckled softly. "Oh, this is going to be fun," it chirped, adjusting its oversized goggles. "I wonder what they'll do with interpretive dance." The Galactic Senate buzzed with a mixture of fear and fascination, realizing that the Zargonian incident was not an isolated case. It was a harbinger of things to come, a sign that the galaxy was about to be irrevocably altered by the unpredictable, often illogical, and occasionally brilliant influence of humanity. The age of interstellar conformity was over. The age of intergalactic sugar rushes and whatever else humanity might dream up had just begun. And nobody, not even the Krill Collective, knew what to expect next.